the earth split open. Kings were forced from their thrones, and the world's largest ship began to rise from steel and steam. Some of these moments shook the earth. Others changed it forever without a single shot fired. Iran, January 23rd. In a single morning, a valley of life became a valley of the dead. Spain, July. The streets of Barcelona burned for 7 days and nights. And in Belfast, March 31st, the first steel ribs of the Titanic reached for the sky. In this episode, we uncover 10 buried events from 1909, stories almost forgotten, but never truly gone, because history didn't lose them. It buried them. On the morning of January 23rd, 1909, the Silakhor plain in Persia awoke to an icy winter sun and a silence that wouldn't last. At 4:35 a.m., the ground gave a warning, a low, muffled groan from deep beneath the earth. Then it came, a violent convulsion that split the plain apart. Borujerd's clay walls crumbled like sand, burying hundreds where they stood. Those who lived stumbled into the streets, silent, shivering, not yet knowing who was gone. By the day's end, nearly 6,000 souls were lost, the plain littered with the remnants of a life before dawn. Far away, officials in Constantinople would soon receive a telegram, but not about an earthquake. This time, the message spoke of something darker.
Urgent. Reports of unrest in Adana. Situation deteriorating. Awaiting immediate orders.
On April 14th, 1909, the city of Adana in the Ottoman Empire erupted into violence that would stain its streets red for days. What began as political tension quickly turned into organized slaughter, targeting the Armenian population. Fires were set to Armenian homes and businesses, the smoke rising like a grim signal over the city. By the time the killing stopped, thousands lay dead, most of them Armenians, their only crime being who they were. The massacre shocked the world, yet the Ottoman government's response was slow, leaving survivors in fear long after the smoke had cleared. For the Armenians of Adana, 1909 became a year not of politics, but of survival, and of loss too deep to measure. But as the world reeled from the bloodshed in Adana, another corner of the globe was about to witness its own conquest, a campaign that would redraw the map of Africa.
This just in from West Africa. French forces have entered Abdicates, the heart of the Wadai Sultanate.
On June 6, 1909, the French tricolor was raised over Abdicates, the capital of the Wadai Sultanate in Central Africa. The Wadai Empire, once a powerful Islamic sultanate, had resisted foreign control for decades. But after years of mounting pressure, French forces advanced from Chad, outnumbering and outgunning the Sultan's warriors. The final stand at Abdicates was short, outdated rifles and swords against modern artillery. By nightfall, the Sultanate had fallen, and Wadai was absorbed into French Equatorial Africa. For the people of Wadai, centuries of independence ended in a single day. But while empires shifted in Africa, Europe was about to be shaken by a very different kind of violence, one that would strike at the heart of London.
Urgent dispatch to Scotland Yard. Intelligence suggests an assassination plot is already in motion within the capital.
On June 8, 1909, the streets of London witnessed an assassination that shocked the British Empire. Sir William Curzon Willey, a senior official in the India Office, was attending an evening event at the Imperial Institute. As he mingled with guests, a young Indian nationalist named Madan Lal Dhingra stepped forward. Without warning, he drew a revolver and fired point-blank into Willey's chest. Willey fell instantly, and another man who tried to intervene was fatally wounded. Dhingra was seized immediately, calm, unrepentant, and ready to die for his cause. But while London mourned, another capital was on the brink of a royal collapse, and by July, a Persian Shah would be forced from his throne.
This is London calling. Reports from Tehran suggest the Qajar dynasty faces unprecedented unrest. The Shah's position grows perilous.
On July 16, 1909, the Qajar dynasty faced a turning point when Muhammad Ali Shah of Persia was forced to step down. His reign had been marred by violent clashes with the constitutionalists, who demanded a parliament and a limit to royal power. After months of siege and political pressure, his allies deserted him one by one. Surrounded and powerless, the Shah agreed to abdicate in favor of his young son, Ahmad Shah. It was the end of an era and the beginning of a fragile constitutional monarchy. But even with a new ruler, unrest in Persia and across the world was far from over. Because just days later, Barcelona would erupt in one of the bloodiest urban uprisings of the decade, known as the Tragic Week. Before we go to the next event, if you've made it this far, give us a like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us which moment from 1908 surprised you most.
Urgent dispatch from Madrid. Reports from Catalonia indicate mass protests, barricades, and violent clashes in Barcelona. Situation critical.
In late July 1909, Barcelona erupted in a wave of violence that would be remembered as the Tragic Week. The spark was the government's decision to send reservists, many of them working-class fathers, to fight in Morocco. Protests quickly escalated into riots, with barricades thrown up in the city streets. Churches and convents were burned as anti-clerical anger boiled over. The army responded with brutal force, leaving more than 100 dead and thousands arrested. When the smoke cleared, Barcelona was scarred, and the rift between people and state had deepened. But while Barcelona's wounds were still raw, news from the Far East would shock the world. A former Prime Minister of Japan had been gunned down on foreign soil.
This just in from Harbin. Former Japanese Prime Minister Itō Hirobumi has been assassinated while awaiting a train. Details to follow.
On the cold morning of October 26, 1909, Harbin's railway station bustled with diplomats, soldiers, and whispers of high politics. Itō Hirobumi, Japan's former prime minister and resident general of Korea, had come for delicate negotiations with Russian officials. But among the onlookers stood An Jung-gon, a Korean nationalist who saw Itō as the architect of his nation's suffering. As Itō approached, 3 sharp gunshots cracked through the cold air. Itō collapsed instantly, struck in the chest, while chaos engulfed the platform. For Korea, it was an act of defiance. For Japan, it was a provocation that would harden its grip. While bullets decided power in the east, in the shipyards of Belfast, a giant was quietly taking shape, one destined for both glory and disaster. On March 31, 1909, the world's largest passenger ship began to rise from the docks of Belfast. This was not just another liner. It was a floating palace, a statement of Britain's industrial might. Over 15,000 men toiled in grueling shifts, riveting steel, hoisting beams, and shaping history with every blow of the hammer. Each rivet was a gamble, iron or steel, choices that would later be judged in tragedy. Above it all, the great gantry cranes loomed like steel skeletons against the Belfast sky. From her first frame, Titanic was meant to awe, yet fate was already waiting in the cold Atlantic. And while Belfast dreamed of conquering the seas half a world away, a nation was choosing the very ground where its future capital would rise.
The site has been chosen. Our new capital shall rise between the mountains and the plain, a city for the next century.
On December 13th, 1909, the search for Australia's new capital came to an end. After years of fierce debate between Sydney and Melbourne, compromise finally took root here, in the southern tablelands of New South Wales. The land was chosen for its climate, its beauty, and its distance, close to both cities, yet belonging to neither. Officials stood shoulder to shoulder in their dark coats, imagining a city that did not yet exist. It was more than a patch of land. It was a promise that this young federation would shape its own destiny. In time, the paddocks would give way to Parliament House, but in 1909, all they had was vision. And as Australia claimed the ground for its new capital, the world was also saying farewell to great leaders and welcoming the birth of those who would shape the century ahead. On January 2nd, 1909, Barry Goldwater was born. Decades later, he would reshape American politics as a 5-term U.S. Senator from Arizona and the Republican presidential nominee in 1964, credited with sparking the modern conservative movement. On February 15, 1909, Miep Gies was born in Austria. During World War II, she risked her life to hide Anne Frank and her family, later preserving Anne's diary for the world to read. On June 20, 1909, Errol Flynn was born in Hobart, Tasmania. Known for his swashbuckling roles in Hollywood's golden age, he became one of cinema's most charismatic and controversial leading men. On February 17, 1909, Geronimo, Apache leader and resistance fighter, died in captivity. For decades, he had fought to defend his people's land and freedom against U.S. and Mexican forces. On August 8, 1909, Mary MacKillop, Australia's first canonized saint, passed away. She had dedicated her life to educating poor children and founding the Sisters of St. Joseph of the Sacred Heart. On December 17, 1909, King Leopold II of Belgium died. His reign left a dark legacy. Under his personal rule, the Congo Free State was the site of mass atrocities and exploitation. If you enjoyed this journey through 1909, give this video a like. It helps us bring more forgotten history back to life. Drop a comment and tell us, what event from 1909 surprised you the most? And what other moments should we explore? If you missed our 1908 episode, click the card now. It's packed with revolts, assassinations, and the events that set the stage for this year. And next week, we travel to 1910, a year of revolutions, disasters, and moments that changed the century. Until then, take care and farewell.